afternoon everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another one of our videos. Today I'm going to be talking to a very special lady called Shelley Garland, and she is going to be talking to us about her daughter's experience with sarcoidosis. Shelley's daughter sadly passed away last month, and her family have been doing an incredible amount of fundraising recently, and she is going to be telling us a bit about her daughter's story and experience. Just before we get into the video, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow SarcoidosisUK are going to be part of a live Twitter chat. So this is in honour of Sarcoidosis Awareness Month, and we're going to be partaking in the chat with a few other sarcoidosis organisations, both in the UK and also in America as well. So this is an international event and will be taking place on Twitter. To follow along with the conversation, all you need to do is head to Twitter tomorrow at 7 p.m. And follow the hashtag SarcTalk. Stronger Than Sarcoidosis are going to be tweeting out some questions for us to answer, so we'll be sharing our resources, and also patients will have the opportunity to respond to some answers as well, respond to some questions. So if you do want to get involved, do head over to Twitter. It's going to be a great event and bringing together, as I said, multiple sarcoidosis organisations, so it will be a really great opportunity to come together and join together as one sarcoidosis community in honour of Awareness Month. So please do join us for that event. As I said, we're joined today by Shelley Garland, so I'd like to introduce Shelley. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it means a lot to yourself and your family for you to be speaking to us today, Shelley. It's an incredibly brave thing that you're doing, so thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
No, you're more than welcome. As I said, this is a video in Suzi's memory. So Suzi suffered from sarcoidosis, and she had quite a turbulent lead up, I think it's fair to say, with her kind of diagnosis. It did take quite a while. So I think it would be great just to have a bit of a discussion about that. And can you tell us a bit, Shelley, about how Suzi's journey started and kind of what led up to that point of diagnosis of sarcoidosis?
Of course. Yeah, Suzi's diagnosis, it was a long one, unfortunately. She was 17 when she first had a seizure. She actually had a seizure when she was on a driving lesson. She careered off the road, unfortunately. But the first I knew was I got a telephone call from the hospital, asked me to pick her up. We didn't know she'd had a seizure at that point. And they put the seizure down to that she'd skipped her lunch for a driving test. So they didn't look into it any further at that point. It was only after 2 further seizures in February 2006 that they decided to do an MRI and an EEG to see what was going on with Suzi. Because Suzi was only 17 and a half at the time, she was seen by a paediatrician who told her after the MRI that she'd got a tumour, which was a little bit, it was a bit of a shock to say the least. Suzi took everything in her stride. She called it Tina the tumour, which was quite funny. She didn't let it affect her everyday life. She took everything on board at that point. It wasn't until March 2007, still not a lot was being done to ease Suzi's epilepsy, and she was started to take medication for epilepsy. The MRIs was showing that the tumour was the same size, it hadn't changed or anything. We decided to see a private neurologist after this point because we didn't seem to be getting anywhere. He told us that in early January 2008, 2 years after the first seizure, that it wasn't a tumour, it was actually a granuloma. Still nothing was really done. With her seizures were still ongoing. She'd not have the full tonic-clonic seizures. She'd just have more focal seizures that were going on. Again, we looked for, I think we saw by this point she'd been on 3 different changes of epilepsy drugs, and she'd had various MRIs throughout and things hadn't changed. we saw another doctor up in Sheffield. We'd seen him do pioneering surgery on people that had had epilepsy. We asked him to have a look at Suzi also, and he was under the same opinion that it was in a place that couldn't be operated on, and she'd got an atypical meningioma. I can't say the word, meningioma.
Yeah.
But he reassured us that it hadn't changed for 4 years and that she was okay being monitored at this point. It wasn't until 2010 that she saw another neurologist, Dr. Dardis, and it was when he wasn't on, one of the years that he wasn't there, 2012, March 2012, they decided to do treatment and decided to reinvestigate that it could be a central nervous system inflammation. They decided they were going to do a lumbar puncture at this stage and a 3-day course of IV steroids. They were supposed to follow up with an MRI scan, but we didn't know whereabouts that was supposed to be. You're very much in their hands with what's going on. Yeah. But they failed to follow up speedily enough. So it was in November 2012, a good 6 months that she had the MRI. The lesion, though, had reduced in that time. And by November 2013, it had reduced further. And they decided that Suzi would go on then just to be seen by the epilepsy people. Because they were pleased, obviously, we were pleased also that the MRIs were showing that the lesion had reduced considerably. In fact, they told us if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't be able to see it. So it got that small, which was reassuring for us as parents. When Suzi was, in 2013, when Suzi was put onto the epilepsy nurse, then you just saw the neurology not very often. But Suzi's epilepsy had continued to be not very managed very well. There was never seemed to be a drug that was suitable, or there was always some complication with it. And she was continually suffering with headaches and pain behind the eyes. And with she'd get once yearly appointments to see an epilepsy nurse, which would last for 10 minutes, which we feel was never quite enough, unfortunately. It wasn't until 2017 when things progressively were getting a lot worse for Suzi. She'd had 5 tonic-clonic seizures in a space of about 7 months, from the April to the November. She had 5. I wrote then to a few of the surgeons, the neurologists that she'd seen, asking them to take a look at their Suzi again. And in that time, Suzi's dad had took her again to see Dr. Kenton, the neurologist, on a private consultation. And he looked into doing another EEG and another MRI. In 2018, she got sacked from work, unfortunately, because obviously people know with sarcoidosis, it can affect you so many ways. Some days you're ill, some days you're well, and with the not knowing this, it's very much an illness that you can't see on the outside. So it's really hard for people to understand that you need time out. And because Suzi had only been diagnosed with epilepsy, it was even harder for people to understand. So she, unfortunately, in 2018, she got the sack from work, which led to, I think, to a little time of depression on Suzi's part. She was very isolated. And she was still suffering with her epilepsy still not controlled. 2019, she really focused on her artwork and trying to get herself well. And again, tried to get to see people. That her appointments were always like mixed and matched or changed or swapped. It was only the worsening of her symptoms in beginning of 2020 that she eventually was admitted to hospital when she'd got double vision. It took the worsening of things to actually get the diagnosis that she needed, but a little bit too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It's quite a staggering story, really, the entire time span that this kind of developed for, and as you said, the fact that she didn't get this diagnosis until so late. I think another one of the interesting things you touched on there was the fact that sarcoidosis is an invisible illness. We speak about this quite a lot. I know a lot of people who are watching will really sympathise with that, because with the disease, there not being kind of those physical side effects occasionally, it gets overlooked, or people don't understand the full implications of sarcoidosis and what effect it actually has on someone's both well-being and also obviously physical health side as well. So Suzi, when she did get the diagnosis, then it was of neurosarcoidosis.
Yes.
Did she have sarcoidosis outside of the central nervous system, or was it just impacting her kind of the brain and spinal cord, like the central nervous system part, or were there any other indicators of sarcoidosis elsewhere as well?
Looking back now, back in 2018, there are signs that Suzi had clusters of a rash on her torso and on her hands and up her arms. Looking back now, I think that was clusters of sarcoidosis of the skin. And when she came home in the middle of last year in August time, we were doing her hair, and I noticed there was skin sarcoidosis on her skin, on her hair as well, within her hair. So I think, had we known, if we'd have been more aware about it, we would have been able to see that there was something else going on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Dr. Kidd, actually, who many of you will know as the neurosarcoidosis specialist, he has previously stated that it's quite rare for someone with neurosarcoidosis to only have sarcoidosis that impacts the brain and spinal cord, kind of known as isolated neurosarcoidosis. In actual fact, there are often other indicators, as you kind of touched on there, skin sarcoidosis, that obviously, had you known, that could have been an indicator of something else going on, but it's obviously really important for us to be spreading this information so that people know all of the signs, because with the disease and its rarity, a lot of people either get misdiagnosed, or the diagnosis comes so late that those early signs and kind of indicators are not picked up on as they should be, which obviously Suzi had in her case as well. Had you kind of heard of sarcoidosis at all prior to Suzi's diagnosis? I'm assuming it wasn't something that was in your vocabulary to start off with.
No, not at all. And it was when we heard neurosarcoidosis. It's not a word we were at all familiar with. We'd not heard of sarcoidosis, let alone neurosarcoidosis. Even when I put in neurosarcoidosis into the NHS help on their webpage, nothing comes up. So there was nothing out there, and it still didn't give us any clues as to what was going on, unfortunately. I learned a lot, and learned a little bit now, not a lot, I would say, because there's not a lot of information out there. And that's why we want to spread Suzi's story and get as much information, make people more aware of what it is, and how it affects people and how it affects people's lives.
Definitely, and that's something we try work on as a charity as well, get this quality information out to not only sarcoidosis patients, but their families and kind of loved ones affected, because we touched on just before the call actually, didn't we, Shelley, that it's not just sarcoidosis patients that kind of have to go through this, because obviously it's really difficult for family and loved ones as well, especially when you're dealing with something that no one's ever heard of in your kind of family or close circles. To suddenly try and provide that support to someone who is going through something that you don't know a lot about yourself is really challenging. So that's definitely an area that as a charity we try to support as well, and be that quality source of information for patients, that they can come to us if they get first diagnosed and need more information, or at a later stage of their journey as well, and definitely want to be able to provide support to patients, friends and relatives and loved ones as well, because it's definitely very important. So then with Suzi's kind of later diagnosis, when she did get that, was she able to see a neurosarcoidosis expert at all, or was she still having some trouble kind of getting that more closely looked at by a specialist?
Unfortunately, because it happened at the beginning of lockdown last year, when Suzi, her symptoms had progressed. At first, Suzi said that she'd been messing about with TikTok and doing a TikTok challenge. She thought she'd hurt her back doing that way. It's only when her symptoms got worse, when she got double vision as well, that she went 3 times to A&E, and it was only with the worsening with her double vision that they decided we've got to get her in and have a little look, see what's going on. When she did, it took a matter of weeks. She was admitted into hospital in Warwick. They transferred her to Coventry, and where she met Dr. Aaron, who was a neurologist, and she mentioned neurosarcoidosis. Suzi was put very quickly onto steroids, but because the mass in her neck was still active, they wanted to be able to take a biopsy, but the best way of getting the biopsy was from the mass that was in the brain. So Suzi agreed to having it. I think Suzi was so keen to find what was wrong with her and get things moving. She was never shy of wanting to get better. She wanted so much she got so much to live for. She wanted to get out there and find out and get better. That was her main aim.
Yeah. No, I think something definitely that needs to change is that kind of early point of that diagnosis, because as you said, if Suzi and her kind of the specialist that had seen her prior had more indication of sarcoidosis and more knowledge, it might have been diagnosed at an earlier rate, and could have had an impact later on. Kind of coming on from that then, in your opinion, what would you like to see change in terms of kind of awareness and knowledge amongst healthcare professionals and the public as well of sarcoidosis, in the next few years? What would you like to really see happen with that?
I think I'd like to see, when people do have something that is a problem like Suzi's, is to look at something as the whole rather than just focus on just the epilepsy. More could have been done in terms of asking if there was anything else that was going on at the same time. I had taken a good examination of her. The once yearly, just a quick checkup of 10 minutes wasn't always good. It isn't not really good enough over that length of time. And despite going to see the doctor when things flared up, or when things were, which now we know was probably a flare-up, when she went to see the doctors, they were also so scared of actually changing anything or doing anything. They'd always wait to refer to see the neurologist or the epilepsy nurse. There is only one epilepsy nurse in the whole area here, which covers a vast area, and she sees the whole of Coventry and Warwickshire. And even that little 10-minute appointment just once a year, which was very often put back, it was a long diagnosis, a long time to get diagnosed. As Suzi was under the care of 4 neurologists, and not one had mentioned sarcoidosis or neurosarcoidosis. or that about the inflammation in the central nervous system. It was only by chance that Dr. Dardis wasn't there and she saw another neurologist that they thought about doing the lumbar puncture and the steroids, which obviously reduced it at that stage. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. But unfortunately,
it's definitely, it's a heartbreaking story, and we've got people commenting on Facebook that are watching us live, so thank you for joining in and tuning into the video today. But kind of empathizing with you and say it's unfortunately a kind of similar story to what other people have experienced in terms of the long diagnosis. It's perhaps one of the biggest problems with potential sarcoidosis patients, that diagnosis just isn't caught very early on. And of course, which is why things like Sarcoidosis Awareness Month are so important for raising awareness of rare disease, because it kind of often gets overshadowed by other diseases, or that the quality information isn't passed along through to the appropriate people to actually be fed down. So it's definitely something that we really try to focus on as a charity, and get that information out there for people. Just on a kind of note then, I know you've been doing some incredible fundraising activities, and you kind of mentioned earlier on in the video that the main reason you're fundraising is obviously to fund research through Sarcoidosis UK, and kind of improve things so that hopefully other people in the future won't have to go through the same thing that you've been through. Your Just Giving page, which we will be posting the link to, has reached over an incredible amount. It's already at over £7,000, so really edging up to your target, which you've set as £10,000, which is just absolutely incredible. And I know you've got some other fundraising activities planned for the rest of the year. Do you just want to talk about that a little bit as well? Because I'm sure people would love to hear what you've got planned.
Yeah, no, I would. I mean, it's an amazing amount so far. I think it was just before we came on, it was 7,688.
Wow.
And that, with the gift aid as well, that's an amazing amount of money that people have raised. And it just shows the love for Suzi was, and also Suzi's story, that people that have it touched people. Yeah. During all the time, I have to say that Suzi was an absolutely incredible person. She was full of life and wanted to live life to the full, and always did. Sorry, well enough.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
Yeah, the family are keen to do lots of fundraising events. I think the more energetic ones that want to plan to do a wolf run, hopefully this year, which I'll remind them all of that said they want. We want to do. Suzi was a very fantastic artist. One of her paintings behind me there, the hands, her and her fiance's hands as well. We want to do an art exhibition and things like that. I plan to walk the Camino Way, which is a walk of 780 kilometres. I plan on doing that as well to raise money for sarcoidosis as well.
That's absolutely incredible. It's a staggering amount that you've been able to raise so far, and it's a real kind of it shows just how much Suzi meant to so many people, and the fact that your whole family are getting involved with this, it's absolutely incredible, and I'd love to be we'll all be kept along, keeping updated on the way of your journey and the things that you're all getting up to, because it's absolutely incredible. But I'll just touch back to some of the comments that we've had through Facebook. People are just obviously very keen to show their support and thanking you for sharing the story. I think that's one of the really important things to kind of take away from the video, is the fact that the way that we're able to raise awareness and kind of get more people aware of what sarcoidosis is through people like Shelley sharing her experience. And it's not by no means an easy thing to do. It's incredibly brave of her to come out and speak today and to share Suzi's story, but it's through sharing these patient stories that we're really able to make a change, and hopefully in the next few years we will really see some major breakthrough with the way that sarcoidosis patients are diagnosed and treated, and kind of through that journey that things really do improve. We've had Jackie commented saying that we definitely need more clinics across the country that specialise in sarcoidosis. Is this the only way we'll get treatment and need that, expert advice? So I think that's definitely something that really resonates with a lot of people. And she says, "Love to you, Shelley, and your daughter sounded like an incredibly brave girl." And many other people are saying, "Thank you so much for sharing your story," and it means a great amount. So, as I said, it's been lovely chatting to you, and thank you so much for sharing Suzi's story. I think everyone has really enjoyed hearing you speak today. And if you want to read more about Suzi's story, you can do so through the Just Giving link. Of course, any donations will be extremely appreciated. Shelley's family has done an incredible thing of already getting to such a high amount, but I know, of course, you want to raise as much as you can, so any donations would be extremely appreciated. So we will be posting that link for you all, and of course keeping you all up to date with more fundraising activities in the future. But for now, thank you so much, Shelley. It's been absolutely great having you join us, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much, guys. We look forward to speaking soon in another video. And as I said, be sure to tune in to the Sarcoidosis Twitter chat if you can tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.